Hello there, and welcome to my Dark and Darker tier list for the Rogue class. What's Dark and Darker? Well, it's an extraction looter shooter without all the shooting and none of that constant shouting in Russian expletives. So essentially, Escape from Dungeons & Dragons. You've got a battle royale zone that closes in and forces players to meet in the middle of the map where exits open up for your safe return to the lobby, aka the Tavern of Depresso. Your objective, loot as much as you can and survive the onslaught of tanky PvE and players that want your gear. On death, you lose everything you go in with, and it's pretty merciless. The movement is slow and janky, so your plays have to be calculated. Otherwise, your first couple of hours of the game will be guaranteed full of dying from players, dying from zombies, dying from traps, and just more death, 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 and death. Well, I've never been bullshit so much in my life. You may be asking, why put yourself through this? Good question. I guess it's the sweet release of dopamine and that chase of the rush. Every time you find a good item to give you that little bit of an edge over your opponent, you're tapping into that chemical rush released from the hypothalamus of your mammalian brain. These types of games are technically torture of the balls in its purest form. The reason we come back for more as well? For more. Because there's always more. More loot. And more frags. Because there's a leaderboard after all. Once you find yourself comfortable with the janky mechanics of the game, you begin your journey to learning what classes you want to roll with. So far, there's 6 classes. Wizard, Rogue, Ranger, Fighter, Cleric, and Barbarians. So what the hell am I talking to you about in this video? Well, we're focusing on a tier list of the Rogue's experience so far in the beta of Dark and Darker. This is where the end of the intro is, and the rest of the video begins. And scene. As we get stuck into the tier list, I want to remind everyone that the angle I approach this from is as a solo player. I pretty much play this exclusively solo, so my views are skewed by that perspective. Healing his teammates. We begin with the weapons. Daggers. There's a roster of weapons for each class. I'll dive into the few that I got my hands onto during the beta. First up, every rogue's tool of the trade, a trusty dagger. It's got a short range, and you have to close the gap and break the uncomfortable 30cm rule to reach a player's hitbox. On its own, it's kind of rubbish, but where it becomes lethal is combining a surprise attack on someone with class perks like extra damage on backstabs or using poison on your dagger. It's like, Steve, you have to casting the poison buff on your dagger. Naturally, it does damage over time and can lead to a comically painful moment like this. Please come out. Game! Ow! Yes, I took him with me. But at what cost? Hey Tim. Throwing knives. It's in the name. It's a knife you can throw. Now, it's not as powerful as the ranged attacks of a wizard or ranger, but if you time things right, you can do some opening damage on someone from afar and then lead into an attack with the dagger while they're dazed and confused as to where the hell you are. Alternatively, you could just sneak up on someone who is low HP after they've engaged a skeleton fight and really cheese them off. Brilliant. On their own, they kind of suck, but combined with something else, pretty good. B tier. The Rapier. Slower attack, but definitely gives you the much needed range to keep your distance with certain PvE mods. I prefer the buffs you can get with certain abilities on the daggers at the moment, and unfortunately I have to put the Rapier somewhere underneath the dagger rating on this silly ass ultimate tier list BS board. B. Class level system. The game's still in its infancy, it's like a beta, it's not in the game, so I guess we can't really give it a tier. Perks. Lockpick expert. The ability to pick locks of chests without lockpicks. Maybe down the line you can have loads of gold coin to afford buying loads of lockpicks that it becomes a viable and cost-effective way of looting when in high-tier areas. But For beginners, I think this is a great perk to hold on to as the main objective is looting after all. You have constant access to that high tier chest loot. S tier. Hidden pockets. Basically, your potions don't show to other players on your belt when they look at you. I don't think that information is all that important because people are usually going to fight you whether you have a potion on your belt or not. However, it's good for using it to hide in the shadows as potions are bright and kind of glow in the dark. D tier. Ambush. The additional damage you do after coming out of stealth, granted for like 3 seconds, is really strong. And a 50% extra damage buff, but you really have to make it count. And usually you're fighting duos or trios most of the time in my experience. I kind of prefer to use a perk that I could use on multiple targets during a fight rather than a one-off on one target and then not really have the perk be useful for the rest of the engagement. Si, senora. Trap detection. Speaks for itself. You see traps. I didn't find many people laying traps and sitting in wait, so I felt the perk is a bit of a waste. But, and here's the big but, the meta can always change in the future as players wise up to strategies in this game. Maybe one to keep an eye on in the future. It's a D tier. Pickpocket. I can just kill them for their loot, right? But now until future updates or meta changes, D tier. Backstab. I like the 25% damage bonus as it feels almost as strong as ambush. Well, 25% less, but it's still a strong bonus when in consideration. It's guaranteed every time you do it and not time-based as long as you hit them in the back. Sometimes in 1v1s, the enemy panics and tries to reposition to turn to like dodge you, and you end up hitting them in the back, getting bonus damage anyway. I think it's really good to use when done right. A tier. Poison weapon is where it's at. 1 damage per second for 4 seconds and it stacks. So if you get a good 2 or 3 stabs in it, like you're looking at an extra 12 damage on top of your existing damage. Doesn't sound like much, but it adds up very quickly in a fight. S tier. Reaper's alright, but the footsteps are so loud anyway that people with really good headsets are going to pick you up. E tier. Stealth. I'm going to be honest. I didn't get to use it much in practice because my enemies were often further than 10 steps away. However, if you use the invisibility and this perk in combination, I'm pretty sure you can combine it well with the backstab perks when you have multiples unlocked. C tier, Dagger Expert. 5% extra damage as a passive with daggers. Probably really good for those without much finesse on other perks. It will definitely be good if you stack it with the backstab and poison weapon when you have multiples unlocked in the future. D tier. PvE. The way we'll approach this is the higher I place them on this list, the higher they pose a threat to you. First up, spiders. They're a pain in the ass mid-fight and will bite your ankles while you're trying to juggle a 1v3 situation. Always best to clear them out before you take on more than you can chew. They aren't tanky, but they are dangerous when you get swarmed. When you see spiders in hordes like this, jump to the vases they spawn from and eliminate it straight away. Then you can just exterminate the rest of them with a bit of raid. This video wasn't brought to you by Raid. You thought I was going to segue into an ad. However, you've been bamboozled. And it wasn't Raid Shadow Legends either. So you've been double bamboozled. One trick I found to get rid of these pests is jumping on top of them. They go into like an attack animation and face each other as you glide over their heads, and in turn, accidentally damage one another instead of you. B tier. Mummified zombies. They're very scary, they look really spooky, and are definitely spongy. They take a while to bring down, but honestly, they are that slow that you can kind of run past them most of the time. Where they really become problematic is the gas versions of them. I guess gas zombies? These guys are on a bad diet and really let it rip. The fart clouds create an AoE that builds up the more they fart. The longer they are alive and the more they fart, the more the room is choked out by it. If other players or PvE enter the corridor you're in, you might not have an exit because there's so much fart cloud being laid down. It's best to take them out of the equation when you can. Otherwise, vacate the area immediately. Skeletons. Plain and simply just beat the living shit out of me. As a solo, you're often dealing with 2 or so at the same time, making the back and forth juggle with the dagger really hard. Rapiers definitely are the way to go with fighting them, keeping them at arm's length because when they hit, they really hit like a train. Best advice for dealing with the Archer variant I can give at the moment is get really close to them and then A and D strafe as they attempt to aim down sight and hit you with their arrows. Often they'll miss and you'll just tap away at them left and right. S tier. The Skeleton Mage. Really tanky and casts like an Area of Effect fire spell that wipes out almost all of your health on impact. Stay the hell out of dodge with these. Mini-boss Wraithman. Only take them on if you've cleared the area around them or have massive balls. Or alternatively, you can just cheese them from above. S tier. Flying Skullbats, or Scats, as I'll call them. The reason these guys are difficult is because the hitboxes are tied to their model. So if you miss their tiny faces, you miss your shots. They're really incredibly difficult to deal with mid-fight with other PvE or players. If they add a flamethrower to the game to deal with them, it'd be much appreciated. A Flying Mosquito. I don't even know what the hell this thing is. No ideal solutions to this beast yet. It fires projectiles at you that melts you pretty quick. Proceed with caution, maybe carry some throwing knives, or hopefully when the flamethrower is added to this game, you can deal with it then. Patterns. The Mimics are sentient chests. They provide a good jump scare, but I'm going to have to put them on F tier. Now that may be a faux pas, but it's my tier list. Player classes. Wizards. They one-shot you as a rogue with a fireball spell. The multiple projectile charge energy spell is lethal, but if you AD strafe to dodge them at a distance, you can kind of weave around most of the shots. Wizards are usually the most vulnerable out of a group if you're taken on a 1v3 situation. I would target them first as they usually play support from behind. Rangers. Their bow and arrow will end you in a group fight. I actually find them more of a threat than Wizards. I just found I took more damage from Rangers in group fights than Wizards, so... Fighters. Smart use of throwing knives and molotovs can keep these guys in check as a rogue. Clerics. They often run mid-fight and resort to healing straight away as they can cast that. I've noticed people playing clerics kind of like often lean on the healing spells and expect their teammates to jump in and support them as they rotate and heal after taking damage. They never really commit to the fight. Barbarians. Big and dumb plus W plays all the way. Their axe will either one-tap you or bring you to your knees. Attempt to outsmart them with throwing knives, Molotov cocktails, or a floor trap or something. Other rogue players, or Garrets, as I'd like to call them. I have a thing with stealth in games like this. Really good stealthy players can get the jump on you, and when people have opening damage, they generally win fights. S tier. I guess we're onto like real-world items now and just some general tips. Vases. Break in case of emergency loot needed, which is always, they have loot just for you. You cannot break the wooden crates though. As a rogue with like a dagger, your light weapons are too weak, I guess. Torches. Honestly, didn't think much about these as a rogue class because generally the class sticks to the shadows and is all about stealth, right? However, I discovered they're really good for planting on top of pressure plates to keep these cheeky little secret passages open. Pretty neat, huh? Lockpicks. I haven't been using them yet in the current form of the beta as the endgame isn't really as complex yet and the lockpicking perk without a lockpick suffices, so... Bandages. They heal in chunks and I kind of like these more than the potions because you can heal up and get straight back into the fight. Potions kind of take time to heal. Now onto the health potions. As I previously said, these heal over time instead of instantly. So if you drink them before leading into a fight, you can passively heal as you strafe and dodge mid-fight while taking the odd hit. Could give you that 5 or 10 HP advantage or a little bit of an edge, you know. Surgical first aid kit. Fully heals you up, but you're exposed without the ability to protect yourself for some time. Really only useful once the fight is over. Takes up about 4 slots, so I don't know. Speed potions. I didn't get much footage of this, so I'm going to be a bit amateur here and I'm just going to have to let you use your imagination. It grants you a speed boost for a short period of time. You can imagine this is really good for juking hack and slash mid-fight. Molotov cocktails. They deny player movement chasing you down if you've thrown it at the floor on retreat. It's also good for offensive strikes on PvE. They'll sit in that and, you know, they'll just start burning away at the floor, taking damage over time. Really effective and cannot overstate how important it is to roll with these in your arsenal. And that's it. That's my rogue tier list for Dark and Darker. I hope you learned something today. I learned that the rogue is pretty sweaty as a class to roll with, particularly solo. I also learned that this game is pretty abusive to one's mental health, but I kept coming back for more and more every goddamn time. Be one with the BS and finger blast all the follow buttons. Particularly the subscribe button. The subscribe button. Press it and I need it. I need to feed my family.